You've got to love riding mud. I mean, I love it, sliding, drifting in and out of control. Now, you might think I'm about to dive into a video where I tell you what and what not to do in terms of technique, but there's loads of things to consider before you even hit the trail. So join me then in a masterclass of mud riding. Right, let's start off with some techniques for mud, which is on flat ground. Now, as you can see, I'm on a 15-foot wide track here, and there's a range of different mud conditions. Now, on my right here is, well, it's almost not mud, it's like hard pack. And then you move across and you've got something which is a bit more of a sludge, a bit of a cake mix. And then you get into the really sort of muddy terrain, bit of water, bit of grass, and then something which is a mix of grass and mud. And then of course back over here onto the hard pack. So common sense would probably tell you to go either side, avoid the mud and ride on the hard pack. But you might not always have the hard pack on each side. And many people would actually avoid the wet part of the ground. But the key thing is, if there's something wet there, it means there's actually a hard surface in there. So a lot of the time, the wet part is probably the easiest part to get through. Let me have a look if it works. So I'm in trail mode. And yeah, I can feel those stones. It's easy going. Now, if there's mud, there's pretty much going to be ruts there as well. I think one of the biggest downfalls is people's inability to deal with ruts. What tends to happen is they get cross-rutted, they got one tie one side, one tie the other side, and you simply slide to a halt. So what happens in this kind of situation? Well, what you do, again, is you raise the tempo and you start going across those ruts at maybe 45 degrees or 90 degrees before you get the cadence up again, the speed up again, you straighten it up, you get back online, and you keep pressing on. I'm on a bit of a trail, I'm on an uphill trail. This is an uphill technique. So obviously, if you were riding this, you would take the drier, grippier, stony conditions. But what if there's a man down? Say someone's fallen over on the trail, they've got their bike line in the ground, so you have to take avoiding action, and you have to ride in the mud. How do you do it? So the first thing to do is, you might have been riding your e-bike for an hour or so in muddy conditions. Your tire might well have got clogged up because it's so heavy. So the first thing to do all times is clear that back tire. So that clears the tread pattern. So in you dive, so high cadence, loads of momentum, and through you go. Now, momentum is very much your friend when it comes to riding mud. This is what happens when you take a slower approach. You simply slide out, you just cannot get through it. Speed then, very important when it comes to mud riding. Right, let's throw some terrain into the mix. First of all, some mud with roots. Now, a key skill here is to look for the line of least resistance. As you can see, we have a step in the route here, and then we have a more gradual, lower profile route here. So if you think about it, if you go through that high step, it's going to be stalling as you go up the hill. Whereas if you go over the lower step, you're going to be able to maintain your momentum. But not only that, now because I started off this climb knowing the conditions, knowing the material I was dealing with, as you can see, there's hints along the trail. This is a bit of sandstone, a lot of grit in it. So I know that underneath there's going to be some grippy conditions. So I can trust that if I start spinning, there's a good chance that I'll find something to grip onto at some point. So it's all about a little bit of confidence as well. Okay, so I got good cadence, I got good speed, I got confidence in the terrain, and I'm spotting that line. Up over the line, boom. Now that probably looked very simple if I say so myself. There's actually a few things going on there which you might not have noticed. And that is, when you're getting up over the step, this little section here, what you try not to do is get your weight over the front, because if you get your weight over the front, there's a high chance you're taking the traction off that rear tire and you might start spinning. However, if you keep a neutral position, get the weight down through that tire, it'll grab into that root and drive you upwards. I mean, look at that. look at that. Now, no technique video in the world will get you upright through conditions like that. I mean, there is simply no grip. Best thing to do there is avoidance. However, have you considered the upper part of the root? Now, most of the time when you get close to trees, the lower part of the root system, the bark has come off it, so there's no grip there. However, if you look up here, it's actually still pretty grippy. There's loads of gnarly old bark on there. So, good technique if you ride in roots and trees is actually stick close to the base of that tree. Oh, broke all the rules. Broke all the rules. Didn't look where I was going. I mean, look at that. Look at that. Absolutely horrific. I think you get the message. Right, what I'll have a look at here is line choice and exit strategies when it comes to mud and corners. As you can see here, there's 1, 2, 3 roots all angled into the corner. Now, it's for sure that if you get your front wheel tangled up with one of these roots, it'll have you off. However, as I mentioned earlier, the base of the tree, there's loads of grip there. Plus, this root here is at more of a 45, 90 degree angle compared to these, which are in line with the track. Moving down to here, as you can see, a nice flat bit of ground here. Definitely a good exit route to the corner. However, on the outside, you've got this almighty root coming down here, which you definitely want to avoid. So what I'm saying, pick your line choices and pick them carefully. As I mentioned earlier, it's about confidence and commitment. And that commitment starts with your tyre. When you're out on a ride, push the envelope, see how far it'll actually go until it actually lets go. You'll be surprised how far these tyres will grip. What you tend to find these days in trail centres and bike parks around the world are trails which get worn in, then the water comes down them, washes away all the organic matter, it actually becomes pretty solid underfoot. That pure riding, that pure mud condition, that's what we're really talking about there. As you can see here is a fresh track, fresh mud. It's absolute heaven to ride in. However, it requires lots of skills. One of the skills is actually finding catch points. So there's absolutely very little grip coming into this corner, but because you know you've got a catch point there, you can just slam it in. So what then is the magic formula for conquering mud? Well, I think it comes down to the 3 T's. Actually, it's 2 T's and an M, but it doesn't matter. And those are tyres, tech, and mindset. This is a king-size statement, but probably, arguably, the most important factor when it comes to your ability to succeed in mud is going to be your tyre choice. Now, tyres come in a range of shapes and sizes, and they're also terrain and mud specific, can you believe? I think in general it's good to go for an intermediate style tyre. Now, an intermediate tyre is neither a dry weather tyre nor a full-on wet weather mud tyre. A tyre such as this, actually, it's the Shorty. Now, there's other tyres on the market, such as the Hillbilly from Specialized or the Magic Mary from Saalbach. And the characteristics of these tyres are such things as an open tread pattern. That means it can disperse the mud quite easily. It's got a good, solid, angular knob profile to it, which means it's going to dig into the mud, and also it's going to hook you up on those climbs as well. And also, it's not going to be too tall or too short. Now, if it's too tall, obviously it's going to interfere when you go through sections of root and rock. There's 3 other things to consider when we're talking tyres. That's tyre weight, tyre pressure, and tyre compound. Now, I tend mostly to go with downhill casing tyres on an e-bike because riding technical terrain, but what you might want to think about is the fact that if you've got a heavier tyre and you're going to be riding in the mud, the bike will in general become quite heavy. Still, nonetheless, a great option for an e-bike tyre. Secondly is the tyre pressure. Now, at 90 kilos, I normally tend to run about 28 psi, but I do actually know people, when they're riding like deeper, muddier conditions like this, they do actually tend to ride slightly higher pressures, and that's because the tyre can dig in, can cut into the mud a little bit easier. And finally, tyre compounds. Now, obviously, if you're going to be riding sticky conditions where there's rocks and roots involved, it definitely is important to go for a slightly softer compound tyre over a harder compound one. Now, there's no point in having really good tyres if you can't see where you're going. And my second T is for the tech. And by tech, I mean such things as a mud guard and also goggles. So you've got good clarity, you can actually pick your lines, you can see where you're going, because if you're riding in muddy conditions, there is a high chance you're going to get a big dollop of mud fly off the front of the tyre, boom in your eye, and you won't be going anywhere. I'll probably add two other things to that mix as well. I would say a good set of grips, because if you're going to be riding in mud, there's a high likelihood that you're going to be falling over and your grips are going to be covered in sludge. So something that clears really easily and still gives you some traction even when it's wet. And also pedals. Now, I am a firm believer that you have to have flat pedals to succeed in mud. Yes, there are people who will prove that wrong, but if you're learning to deal with these conditions, then it's highly likely you're going to be sliding around, your foot's going to be off the pedal, you're going to be working it out. I think the best training tool for learning to ride mud is flat pedals. Mindset is so important when you're tackling mud. Now, I see so many people that are fazed by mud. They really do believe that they cannot ride it. Yet, with the right mindset, and by mindset, I mean commitment, because if you commit to mud, now if you've got the right tyres, you've got your goggles, you've got your line choice, then you can actually ride mud exactly like you would if it was dry conditions. Now, if you want an example of a masterclass in mud riding, Google Sam Hill Champery 2007. It is absolutely off the charts. Now, more than anything, when it comes to mud, it's all about awareness and anticipation. I've got no idea what kind of mud situations you're going to be in, but when you're out and about, look for those grip spots, those dry spots, the flat spots, and the angles to help you get through the muddy situations. If you think this is muddy, by the way, you've got it totally wrong. This is simply a manicured man-made trail. If you want to see some mud action, have a look at the video, which I'm leaving just down below. In the meantime, if you've got any comments, any questions about mud, love to get involved with you guys. Let us know in the comments down below. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and for more electric mountain bike content from around the world, just hit on that globe.